Thanks for joining me. I decided to do a live spontaneously, wasn't planned. Um, Hit the like if you're new to us and you've not seen me before. But yeah, it's lots come about. You've probably noticed the title. I'm sure that's probably why you clicked on it. If you don't know, Bishop Dewar, Reverend Brett Murphy, and Pastor Chris Wickland, they're three clergymen who participate in sort of nationalist rallies. Um, Famously, we did a rather large one in the summer where there was over like 100,000 people, run by a geezer called Tommy Robinson. These guys are no nonsense, sort of very sort of vocal in what they believe, very passionate, God fearing. They're certainly making waves. They're ruffling feathers, to the point where members of the Church of England, and I'm not just talking hierarchy, I'm talking even just sort of like clergy, deacons, bottom level up, lay level up, are now distancing themselves from these particular guys, even though they are all professing Anglicans. In fact, Bishop Kieran Dewar is the bishop of the Anglican. Well, they're basically called. Sorry, I thought I saw something. They're basically called the Confessing Anglican Church. I'm not sure how many churches are under his diocese, but I know Brett, who has a rather big YouTube following and has a parish in Morecambe. Him. He is definitely answerable to Kieran Dewar. And Chris Wickland, as far as I know, is a Baptist minister who's being ordained to be part of the Church of England. Well, I say Church of England, the Confessing Anglican Communion. And I'm not sure when that's going to take place, but basically, the three of them, I call them the three amigos, they're all singing off the same hymn sheet. They're all pretty much running off the same agenda, and they're calling out the same rhetoric. And what do I mean by that? Well, the title, Christian Nationalism, right? I feel that we need to evangelize. It's part of what I do on my channel. I think that's really, really important. But I do think there's a way we do it. And I can't help but think Bishop Dewar, Brett, and Chris Wickland have all had appearances on GB News, so they're all pretty well known now by the mainstream. I feel like they're all using this opportunity of disenfranchised working class Brits, many who feel very isolated, very lonely. It seems to be a predominantly male thing as well, and I've noticed that with the rallies, predominantly male. They're using it as an opportunity to try and get these guys to believe in Christ. Now, you know how the whole saying goes, you cannot bring a horse to water. Well, no, sorry, you can bring a horse to water, you can't make it drink. And it's like a lot of people now are clutching at any possible hope. They feel so broken, they feel so let down, by their senior politicians, and that's at all levels. That's MP level as well, not just Prime Minister. And they want a voice, they want to be heard. And the thing is, it's got to the point now where many feel right at the bottom of the heap. They're lost when it comes to housing. They're lost when it comes to just basic job interviews and opportunities. Especially if you've got like a criminal record or something like that. It's or you don't have particularly great qualifications. You're just bottom of the barrel. Let's be real. I mean, I think their statistic came up recently that people that grew up in seaside areas, and I'm from a seaside town myself. I live in London now. I've been in London 20 years. But if you're from a seaside town, there's a like 80% chance that you won't go beyond further education, and you know, it's a sad reality. It's a sad reality that apparently we're the lowest performing, especially white Brits from seaside towns, we're the lowest performing academically of any ethnicity or class. And the reality is, in England, the areas that are white British, there's no jobs there. There's no opportunities. That's why migrants don't go there. If you're a migrant, you're going to think twice about going to some barren seaside town where there's no industry. The only jobs are in the tourist sector, and that's normally only in the summer. So you're going to literally think twice about coming here. Yeah, absolutely, Noah. Jesus Christ indeed loves us all. John 3:16. You know, for God loved the world so much, he gave up his own begotten Son, so that whoever believes in him will receive eternal life and not perish. Beautiful. So yeah, so basically, these three guys, these three stooges. Now, I like them actually on a personal level. I think they're nice people, and I think their heart's in the right place, and you can see they're passionate. But are they going to make a difference? Are they going to create this huge revival that they keep going on about? I mean, I've been listening to a lot of Chris Wickland. He's doing daily videos, him walking through these rather pretty quaint forests, and he's talking about, yeah, you know, that we can bring the monarchy back, we can strengthen it, we need to, you know, get hold of the state church and give it a shake and sort it out, and we need to somehow infiltrate it, blah 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 blah. And I'm like, it's not going to happen. It's too far gone, my brother. It is not going to happen. And he mentioned that's part of the reason why he's left his low church evangelical role as a pastor, because he was a pastor of a nice Bible believing church, not in the slightest traditional of any kind, not even a confessing church. Just, you know, you can tell he's a basic run of the mill, like born again type pastor. You know, he doesn't know about tradition. He doesn't know about the Christian heritage of the Church of England. He said he grew up in the Church of England. I mean, I don't know if that was just like your typical sort of Christmas and Easter every year. But he said that, you know, the reason why he's joined the Confessing Anglican Church is to infiltrate. He's made no qualms about that. No denial. He said he wants to bring the state church back. But I will say, how are you going to do that when you're not in the state church? If you're in a schismatic fringe group that's not recognised by the state church, it's not in a communion with the state church, you merely only share the name, which is Anglicanism, which is a broad word in itself. How is that going to infiltrate? How is that going to shake feathers? Bishop Dura recently sent a letter to King Charles, you know, to try and sort of pull his heartstrings and get this bit of sentiment going. To no avail, though. King Charles isn't interested in replying to a church that's got nothing to do with him. So, you know, I feel like these guys, they mean well and they're ambitious, but they're not being realistic. Okay, Bixie plays, I don't understand, sorry. Well, if you don't understand, you've joined a Christian channel, and we're talking about the demise of the Church of England, and we're talking about Christian nationalism, if it's a thing. That's what we're trying to establish. Jessica Akaya said hi. Hello, Jessica Akaya. Thank you for joining us. So the three names that are on the title of the video, you may not know them, but it doesn't matter. You don't need to know them. All you really need to know is they're three clergymen, and they stand apart from almost everybody else. You know, okay, so how many Church of England clergymen do we have in this country? We probably have over 3,000. And you've got these three men who claim to be Anglicans, but not part of the Church of England, okay? Not part of the Church of England, but They sing off the same hymn sheet as the Church of England. I would imagine their liturgy is the Church of England, in the sense they use the Book of Common Prayer. They probably partake in the typical feast days you get in the Church of England, whether that be, I don't know, Ash Wednesday, Palm Sunday, Monday, Thursday, you know, all these things that you get throughout the year, Christmas, Advent, you know, I don't know, Resurrection Sunday, Pentecostal Sunday, you know, just general basic feast days. So yeah, they look on the outside Anglican. They certainly wear the attire, you know, the dog collar, the vestments. You know, Brett reads off the Collect daily, which is a very sort of Anglican liturgical prayer book. So they, on the face of it, they all look Anglican. But the reality is, it's sad for me to say this, they're not Anglican. So how can you infiltrate a church, i.e. the Church of England, the state-run church, the See of Canterbury, when you're not part of their church? And even if they were to, like, hypothetically get every single parishioner a member of these rundown C of E churches that have literally sold the gospel away, their words, not mine, then how would they accommodate them all? If you look on the internet and type in confessing Anglican Church, I believe there's no more than 10 in the whole country, all scattered in different geographical postcodes. Brett said recently in one of his videos, there's 2 people that come to his church and they drive 150 miles to go to his church every Sunday. Now, I'm not knocking it. That's amazing dedication. And a lot of my Catholic brothers are doing the same thing with the Latin Mass, because Latin Mass is now few and far between. I'm lucky. I live in London. We have our lion's share of Latin Mass churches. But if you live in, I don't know, rural Dorset, Wiltshire, Yorkshire, you might struggle. And it's the same with finding an Anglican church that's not Church of England. I mean, the two are almost synonymous. It's like, how do you detach Church of England, the church run and led by the king and under the archdiocese primacy, female archdiocese, may I add, in the words of Sarah Mullally. You know, I just don't get what they're going to do. I just don't get it. I mean, Chris, I understand why Chris is really upset. And Chris out of the 3 is probably the most vocal right now. And he was basically crying his eyes out on a live yesterday. And he was basically saying, you know, there was a Church of England school that allowed their children to take part in Ishtar. I didn't even know what an Ishtar was. Ramadan prayers. Okay, which is basically Muslim prayers during school, praying to Allah. I mean, that is shocking. And I understand that, you know, that Chris is concerned about the way this world is going. But let's get things in context here. Church of England schools have never been exclusively Church of England. In fact, because they're run and subsidised by the state, their subscription criteria always has to take the 20% catchment rate of people. And the 20% catchment rate is of non-believers. So it's basically anybody who lives within a certain radius of the school has an entitlement to go to the schools, whether they're Sikh, Hindu, Muslim, Jewish. Now, for all we know, this particular school might embrace other religious prayers as well. It might not just be Muslim prayers. Of course, parental consent is very, very important. And if the school did not tell the parents that they were doing this, then they are wrong. But we should, even as Christians, we should learn about other religions. I think that's really, really important. Obviously, you have to draw the line. So Chris has a right to be angry, but I just don't like the fact that Chris is basically saying that this country is going to end up under Sharia law. You know, and believe me, when I use words like Islamophobia, I will use it in the loosest possible sense. Okay, I am not by any means a woke namby-pamby snowflake. I'm certainly not a lefty liberal Guardian reading champagne sipping douchebag, you know, that has a bag for life carrier bag and shaves his balls every evening. You know, I'm not one of those people. But at the same time, I'm not a hateful person either. And I think this country is multicultural. We can't change that. It's done. Okay, we've had open borders for the last 30, 40 years. Now we've got people from all over the world, which presents a beautiful opportunity for the Christian church to spread the mission and evangelize. Okay? You know, and at the end of the day, if you fear another religion from taking over, you're guilty of putting your fear into man. Now, what does God say? God says, do not fear man, only fear God. Okay? So why are we fearing man? Why are we fearing a fake religion? A religion which is only spread through force where it is anyway. There's been hardly any true conversions in Islamic countries. Most people that are Muslim are born Muslim, right? I get they do have some converts, but the vast majority are born that way. Okay? Why do we think that's going to become center stage? Why do we think that's going to fill the vacuum if Christianity dies a slow death? Now, I agree with Wickland that we have sold our church. The C of E is just weak. It's run by feminists. It's got no masculinity. It's done away with orthodoxy in every sense, in every possible sense. You know, the fact that they're LG blah blah friendly, and it's fine to love LGB. I'm not saying we shouldn't love these guys. We should truly love them, but we can't affirm sin. Okay, it's forbidden in the Bible. So what we have to do is accept that it's in our society, but we have to find a way to not so much ignore it, but we have to be at least indifferent to it. Because as soon as we start being on board with it and giving it airtime, then you basically start normalizing it. And you know, and remember, God hates sin. He doesn't hate the sinner. So we must have that mentality where yes, we've got no time for the sin. We won't affirm it, but we have to love the sinners. Okay, so that's the church. That's what the church needs to do. Now, the CME have not been able to do that. They've become very weak on that front. And I'm not going to even just put it on that. They're weak on all fronts. They're weak on the environmental issues. I mean, everybody knows that climate change is a hoax. Okay, when I was at school, when I'm 41 now, when I was 15, our geography teacher said to us, in 20 years' time, a lot of the country will be underwater. I'm 40 now, okay? This was 23 years ago. Nothing is underwater in this country. Sandbanks is still very much afloat. So it's a hoax. Climate change is a complete hoax. And the Church of England are very much, they put more effort in promoting that than they do promoting solidarity. Because that's what we should be pushing in this country. I have no issues with diversity, but we can't have it at the expense of inclusivity. We can't. So the C of E really has to balance the two. You know, it has to find a way of doing both rather than putting them up against each other and then causing chaos. You know, and that's the big issue we have at the moment. You know, I'll give you an example of inclusivism. Even I watched talk sport sometimes, and one of the guys, his name's Simon Jordan, he was basically, asked what he thinks of John Terry's comments regarding the hijab, because basically a politician in his Twitter said that the hijab should be banned, and John Terry put a like on it, and Simon Jordan basically said, "Well, that's his opinion." And at the end of the day, hijabs do go against inclusivism. They also go against security risks. And they're not particularly a doctrinal practice. There's nothing in any Islamic writings that say you have to wear them. So they are quite oppressive. So Simon Jordan made a point where John Terry's right. To liken a comment which promotes women's rights and promotes equality, equal for all, is not a bad thing. But we've got our woke agenda now in this country where people are now saying, yeah, you can't show any condemnation towards people who juxtapose your values, and I feel like values, especially like Christian values, should be respected, because we respect everybody else's, so it has to be mutual, you see. And there are certain things, and I don't want to just say it's that. I mean, the hijab's one issue, but I mean, there are various other issues as well. Okay, so people running around naked. Let's be honest. So this is the opposite of wearing a hijab. So hijab, you're literally covered head to toe, and all you can see is your eyes, right? Let's go the other extreme. Let's say, right, we're going to allow people just to walk around naked. Can you imagine how much distress that will cause people? Like young children, they see a naked person walking down the street. We actually have laws in this country, you know, and apparently, if you are upset and distressed by seeing a naked person, we can arrest them because it's public indecency, so it's a public order offence, right? So, do you see what I'm saying? They both go against inclusivity. One goes against inclusivity because it's oppressive and it goes against security, right? And the other goes against inclusivity is because it can offend people. It can be seen as sexualized in some way. And also, I feel like naturism is okay if it's in designated areas and everyone's in agreement to it. But if it's in a public area, it can be very offensive as well. So they're both offensive. Did you see where I'm going with this? But no one would say, "Oh, naturism is being racist," because any race can be a naturist. But then you could argue that saying a woman shouldn't wear a hijab isn't racist as well, because any race can technically be a Muslim. I mean, it's predominantly Arabic people, but there's no hard and fast rule of that. Do you see what I'm saying? And they can both be cultural. So where do you draw the line? The fact of the matter is you can't draw the line. But if you want to run a society that is inclusive, then of course the hijab should be banned. They banned it in France. You're banned from wearing that in public. Okay? And just so you don't think I'm being wrong here, a hijab is not the same as a burqa. Okay? A burqa. Oh, hang on, I've got this wrong, haven't I? Yeah, so hang on. Yeah, the burqa is when you can only see the eyes. Yeah, so burqa should be banned. Hijab's fine, because hijab's just a scarf. Right, sorry about that. You get, I'm glad that this isn't being recorded. I can cut this out in the edit. But yeah, so that's it. But going back to Dewar, Bishop Dewar, Brett Murphy, and Chris Wickland, they mean well, but Christian nationalism is not going to work in the way they're trying to push it. It's not. Now, I don't want the Green Party to be head of this country because they're Marxists. Okay, they're communists, they're Marxists. They've said, right, they want to do away with the state church. So that means doing away with the monarchy. And I know a lot of people in England don't particularly like the monarchy, but let's not just forget we did have a great queen who reigned for a very, very long time, who had an impeccable, um, well, I think she had an impeccable record in the sense there was very little scandal to her name, and she did her job exemplary. So the fact of the matter is, will we have another Queen Elizabeth II? Probably not. Different generation. She's from the golden age. My great grandmother was a great woman. She was about around the same age as the Queen. Every person I know that age was great. Sorry, we don't have those people anymore. Um, there's a scripture in Titus. I can't remember where it is, but it tells you what people will be like in the end days, and it's very much what's going on now. I'm not saying that all people are douchebags. I'm not saying that, but there is a trend of increasingly douchebag type people in our society, and it doesn't look like we're weeding them out anytime soon. So yeah, it's I personally think if we let the Green Party come in, that'll be the end to our country. That'll be the final nail to the coffin. I think we have to preserve our monarchy at all costs. I think we have to pray for our monarchy. And this is often neglected. People moan, they moan all the time, they want change, but they're not prepared to do what God asked us to do, which is pray daily. You pray for your enemies, guys. So even if you think, the royal family, these awful people, they drink children's blood and they go to pizza parties and they're absolute wrongins, because we know that there are some that are. Andrew is a complete wrongin, and he should have a millstone. No question. He should have a millstone. But King Charlie, okay, yes, there's dirt to Charles' name. He was mates with Savile. He treated Diana like crap. He married a divorced woman. But give him his props. He can come good. He's not beyond God's grace. Neither is his son William. Neither of them are beyond God's grace. If God wants to save this country, he will. Hello, mate. Western Pennsylvania. How are you? Thanks for joining us, Corey. Yeah, I'm just talking about this country. And I'm talking about nationalism. There's a lot of people that don't want a monarchy anymore. And I'm basically saying we need to keep the monarchy here at all costs, because the monarchy in England symbolises unity between the state and the church, right? It's the glue. If you take that binding force, the catalyst, the thing that insurrects it all together, the society will just crumble. People say, well, France have done all right without a monarchy, but they got rid of theirs a long time ago. They've been able to build up their infrastructure. But it's not been easy for France because because there's no state church there. There's no faith schools in France. Did you know that? You will not find a single Catholic church or Protestant church school in France. They're not allowed. And now, if you look at statistics in Europe, the French have the lowest percentage of Christians out of any country in Europe. Only 10%. 90% literally heathen in France. They are the most anti-Christian country you'll dare to find. I had a mate. He joined a bunch of missionaries to plant churches there, right? They tried to plant an undenominational church in Normandy, the north of France. It was an absolute nightmare. They got spat at, they got cursed, they got garlic thrown at them, quick bang bang with a French baguette. No, I'm making that last bit up. But you know what I mean. It was treacherous. The French is built in their DNA to push back against any sort of religious freedoms. They don't respect religious freedoms. They don't care, and that's why France has surrendered itself to Islam. And France very soon. It's funny because Wickland and Murphy, they're really worried about England. I said, we're not. We're nowhere near where France are. We're nowhere near. And France very soon will become predominantly Muslim. I can put that. I would say in the next 10 years it will be predominantly Muslim. The way the French are going, 100%. But in England, we still have that fabric, that Christian fabric. That's sort of holding us together. I mean, yeah, it's flimsy. It's very flimsy. But there's still something there, you know? It's like in this country, if you die, even if you die as a non-church going person, they will still give you a Christian funeral paid by the state. How lovely. You don't get that in France. If you want a Christian funeral in France, you've got to pay for it. You've got to pay for it. The churches there are falling apart. I mean, they spent a lot of money on the Notre Dame Cathedral. But don't get it twisted. That wasn't French money. That was mostly money from the Vatican that paid for that, for the refurbishment of Notre Dame. The state of France don't even take tax deductions off their people to pay for the church stuff. The churches are in a terrible state over there. Yeah, France is another country with a lot of atheists in Europe. Is Slovakia. It's funny because the first ever Protestants were from Slovakia. They were called the Hussites. Okay, you might know the Moravian Church. So the Moravian Church come from the church that Jan Hus started, right? And they were called the Hussites. And because remember, Czechoslovakia, they used to be called Bohemia in the 14th century. So they were Bohemian Slavic people. They rejected the Holy Roman Empire and they said, no, we don't want your sacraments. We're going to do it on our own because they didn't like the control mechanism of the Catholic Church. But they were heavily persecuted in their own country. So they sort of like swept across Europe and everywhere they went, they got kicked out. And then they had to storm the first 100 years. They had to weather the storm. It was very tough for them. They were basically like gypsies. And then when Henry VIII became the head of the Church of England, and England started their own church, the Hussites came straight to England for refuge because it was the only country in Europe at the time which actually doesn't have Catholics because you weren't allowed to be Catholic when Henry VIII took over. So they found refuge. And then, of course, Luther, not long after that, started his Reformation. But yeah, the Moravians, there's loads of Moravian churches in the UK. Even now, we still got them. And I think they spread to America as well. But where am I getting with this? Oh yeah, so Slovakia's got a high percentage of atheists because the true believers all became Protestant and fucked off. And the believers that were left, which were these like namby-pamby sort of compromise believers, lukewarm Catholics, I call them. They certainly weren't the hardcore Catholics, because the hardcore Catholics wouldn't have put up with the shit. But now Czechoslovakia is, when you compare it to Poland, it's been decimated. It's absolutely been decimated. It's quite sad to see. But no monarchy. This is what happens. If you're a European country and you do away with your monarchy, you do away with Christianity, you always see a rapid decline. And because Europe, we kind of need it in Europe. We need it. We're not like the Americans. America's been successful without any type of monarchy. They've done it on their own back. And there's a lot of zeal, but in Europe we kind of need to kick up the backside. And if we don't have to kick up the backside, we just become lapsed. Um, I don't know what it is, but again, I go back to Dewar, Murphy. So Reverend Brett Murphy, Bishop Kieran Dewar, and Pastor Chris Wickland. The three amigos, right? They're pushing Christian nationalism in the form of Anglicanism. Now, I don't know how ecumenical they are. I don't know if they will rub shoulders with other denominations. I'm sure they will, because they're very, like I said, they've only got 10 churches in the UK. They're very low on numbers. So I think they're going to have to be if they want to make any success out of this. But, I think they, like I said, they mean well, but we're not seeing the turnover which they were 6 months ago saying they would get. 6 months ago, they were like, yeah, we're going to turn every far right mobster into like a church going born again Christian. And I'm like, will you? Because that's down to God. Only God alone can do that. It doesn't matter how well you preach, and how many seeds you sprinkle, for somebody to come to Christ, it has to be from their heart and within. It's a 10-inch journey between there and there. Now, getting someone even to read the Bible is a massive effort. I once had a conversation with someone at a church, and she did the worst possible thing you can do as a Christian, right? Do you know what that is? Judge another person. And she said, she was talking about this guy, right? I'm not going to say his name. And she was saying, you know what? I don't think he'll ever be saved. And I said, excuse me, why'd you say that? And she's like, well, he reads the Bible every single day, but he acts like a complete pillock. And in the Bible it says the devil knows the scriptures better than anybody. And I just think he reads the Bible to be a know-it-all. Can you believe it? This is a woman that actually said this. So this guy, he picks up the Bible, the most boring book in the whole world, to a lot of people, not to me, I love the Bible. And he spends hours and hours reading it, but there's nothing working through him. There's no grace. There's no love from God. He's just doing it to be a smart aleck. And I'm like, are you listening to yourself? That makes no sense. I said, there has to be something in it. Because in James, it says, even the demons believe, right? So even if, okay, so he's not a nice person, he's got a stone heart. But do you not think that the fact that he's just reading the word is 50% more what the average person's doing in the UK? Because I'll tell you what, darling, there's a lot of lovely people in the UK. Nice people. Pleasant, friendly, kind. But they won't even touch the Bible. So who do I have more hope for? Do I have more hope for this arrogant sod that's the one that puts his hand up during Bible study and he's a real clever clogs, knows all the scriptures, but he doesn't pray much and he doesn't really show very good fruit? But am I to have less hope for him and more hope for the person who's really, really nice, but is not interested in knowing anything about Jesus Christ? And I said to this lady, I said, make no mistake, the fact that he's picking the Bible up, he's reading it, it is a bloody good thing. Because when you win somebody intellectually, because we're not all the same, by the way, humans are all different. We're not wired the same way. Some people, especially the atheist-minded people, right? The people that everything's science, they're the ones, they have to read the Bible. Because they're the ones that will see the signs and wonders, but they still won't believe. Some people don't give two fucks about experience. They don't care. They just want to know, is God real? Is there consistency? Does the Bible speak to me? Can I feel the Holy Spirit when I'm reading this Bible? Is there wisdom? Is there morality? You know, can this book illuminate my soul and make me sanctified and hungry for more of it? Because this guy's clearly hungry because he keeps reading it. If the book didn't mean anything to him, he'd stop at the first 2 pages to get, this is boring, and chuck it. The fact that he's putting all the effort to read this book and fully understand it shows there's a little bit of God's grace in him. Don't write him off. I said, don't write him off. And I said, I used to be like that. When I first got hold of the Bible, I couldn't put it down. It didn't mean I believed it all, but I couldn't put it down. Satan attacks anyone getting into scripture. Got to press on though and ignore the haters. Yes, amen to that. We have to. But I didn't like the fact, and this is the same woman, by the way. Oh, I'm saved. She used to tell everyone, you know, you should hear my testimony. I'm going to tell you my testimony when I was saved. It was 1983, the 2nd of March, blah, 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 blah. You know, and she says stuff like that. She's literally judging who's saved in the church and who isn't. There was one guy, he had really bad health problems, and he had a wife that had health problems. So he wasn't a very avid churchgoer. On average, yeah, he's probably going once a month. Ooh, he shouldn't be the caretaker because he had the caretaker safeguarding role of the church, right? How can he safeguard when he's never there? I'm like, cut the guy some slack. Cut the guy some slack. You don't know what's going on at home for him. For all we know, he could be watching the live streams. Oh, they shouldn't do live streams. It makes people lazy. Look, forget about other people. Concentrate on your self-love because your fruit stinks. Honestly, that's what I didn't say that to her, but I felt like it. The frustration. I feel I'm more of a jerk the more spiritual I get because I have to be more defensive against people out of the spirit. Yeah. There's always jerk reactions. I mean, I've lost my cool a few times in church. It's hard because you know it's the house of God. You know, you're on holy ground. You have to like put everything, all the angry feelings you have to leave it outside the door. Because yeah, that is tough. I witnessed one time awful preaching that was theologically wrong on all levels, but I had to sit through it. And trust me, when it finished, I really wanted to say something, but I said no, it's just not the time. But I did write a letter to the church. But yeah, Christian nationalism. So what is Christian nationalism? Okay. Right. Nationalism is being proud of your national identity and not allowing it to be compromised in any way. So for example, your country, wherever you are from, will have laws that are set upon by the principles and values of your citizens, right? At least historically. Now, we know the world's changed a lot in the last 34 years. It's become a lot more liberal. So now we're having liberal values being compromised with Christian conservative values. And there is a real head on collision now. And it's almost like one has to budge, one has to give way for the other. Now, the problem with lefties is they're very militant, you know. They don't want to hear your voice. They want to shut you down. You know, they're not people that can actually reason. Like in the ancient Greek times, like times of Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, people would spend hours trying to reason with one another, hours to come to a logical conclusion. Lefties don't do that. And what they want to do really is just take over. And they want to riddle out Christian institutions, i.e., churches, and they don't care how many people they have to fuck over to get that done. You know, there's no compromise. So I get Dewar, Murphy, and Wickland are taking a hard stance on it, and they're like, no, 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 we have to fight back. But their way of fighting back isn't strategic. It's not going to work. You have to be smart. Think about it. They're all in a fringe church, a church that has no influence on society, a church that's not taken seriously, right? Yes, they got a fairly big social media presence, but trust me, 20,000, 25,000 subs is not going to do anything. That is small fry. Trust me, it's small fry. Well, when you look at people that have, like, I don't know, Ruslan, for example, right? Ruslan is not a theologian. He's not a priest or a pastor. He's just a guy that talks about Christianity. Yeah? He's got 600,000 followers. So someone like him, he has influence, right? He can get onto radio shows. He can get interviews with Joe Rogan, Matt Fradd. You know, he can sort of like network his way through. If Ruslan wanted, he could probably get a day at the White House. You know, these guys, they don't have that traction. They're small fry. You know, they were probably in my position 5 years ago, where they've just got like what 1,000 subs. Because it's like the multitudes, isn't it? You know, believe it or not, with YouTube, it takes ages to get to 100 subs, and then when you get to 100 subs, the multiplications start happening. Yeah, and then you rapidly start going up and up and up. Like, and I've noticed that. So with YouTube, the longer you're on it, the faster your subs will go up. Now, obviously, everybody hits a plateau, and normally the main ceiling in YouTube that causes plateaus is advertising. Because if you want your videos to go out to more and more people, you have to spend more on advertising. So you have to speculate to accumulate. Now, I personally don't spend any money on advertising. My growth is organic, but I wouldn't say no to spending on advertising if I got to, let's say, I don't know, 10,000. Because I think once you get to 10,000, you know you've got the momentum behind you, and you're going to get backed. Right? When you're on your early stages, the problem is some people, they go straight into the advertising, and then they just hit the glass wall, and then they're just throwing money down a hole. So yeah, so with YouTube, it is best to make it organic as possible, grow, 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 and then throw money into it when you hit a glass ceiling. But anyway, Wickland, Dewar, and Murphy are never going to get Razlan numbers. You know, they're never going to get, I don't know, Redeem Zuma numbers. Okay, so you see where I'm going with this? There's levels. There's levels to this game. So how much influence can they really create? They're not allowed in the media. They won't be on the BBC. They won't be on ITV. They won't be on any of the mainstream channels. Okay. You know, okay, they want to buddy up with Tommy Robinson. Tommy Robinson is a Zionist. Tommy Robinson is pro-Israel. That is not the flavour in the UK right now. It's really not. The UK is not naive. That's one thing we're not. We know Israel are not the good party in all of this. They're just not. Israel are bang out of order. Bang out of order. So yeah, you ain't gonna win the British people pro-Israel. It's just not gonna happen. Sorry, but it's just not. So where am I getting with all this? Well, I think the monarchy need a change of heart. They need to realise they have to go a different direction if they want to save this country. And their own church has abandoned them. And believe it or not, I'm not going to put all the blame on King Charles. People want to blame him for the fact we got Sarah Mullally. It wasn't Charles that picked Sarah Mullally. She was picked by the House of Commons. Politicians in the House of Commons. Bear in mind, there's only 21 bishops in the House of Commons. So the majority of them were just members of Parliament that picked Sarah Mullally to be bishop. Okay? All this liberalism is not Charles's fault. He needs to cut himself off from the Church of England and let it go to the dump. Cut all the strings. And what he needs to do is go back to Rome. Because all the countries in Europe that are run by Catholic monarchs have the highest standard of life. You know, they have more harmony, less crime. Yeah. Generally, just a whole better standard of life. Monaco, Liechtenstein, Malta, they have a better standard of life. And I think if he becomes a Catholic, you know, we can get loads of bishops, we can promote the people that are priests into bishop roles, and then allocate them in all the cathedrals, you know, allocate all them in the cathedrals, and then maybe the Vatican can invest in a recruitment drive. Because back traditionally, to be a priest, Catholic priest, you have to be called. It's a vocation, yeah? You're called to do it. Yeah, but some people's calling, it doesn't harvest because of money. They can't afford it. It's too much sacrifice. So what I'm saying, if we get all the seminaries paid for, tax-funded money, right? Also money from the Vatican, we can get a massive recruitment drive of priests, and we can take on all the Anglican priests that are leaving their church. We can take the existing Anglican, doesn't matter if they're married, take them on. We'll go through the ordinariate process, right? Because the ordinariate church, I don't know if you know it, is an Anglican church, right? That's in communion with Rome. They're called the ordinariates. They're not under the Church of England, but they have Church of England liturgies. Perfect. So what we do is we take out, we change these C of E churches into ordinariate churches. And we say to them, do you want to keep your job as a priest? Or do you want a P45? Simple as that. And if they don't want to keep their jobs as a priest and come to Rome, then well, they know where the door is, isn't it? They can whack a screw fix or somewhere. Get a job somewhere else. Sweep airport floors. You know, clean hospital toilets, whatever. But we can basically change the whole infrastructure of this country. And I think it can happen. We just need the king to convert. That's all we need. Gavin Ashington's been talking about it. It's not unfathomable. It's not unfathomable. It really isn't. Yeah, what's up with the rise of anti-Semitic thought and a big Catholic influence base? Candice and can't think of his name. Well, it's not anti-Semitic. Basically, the Catholic Church, and this is Orthodox belief. This is all the Church Fathers believe this. The Catholic Church is Israel. That's what we are. Because Paul said in Romans that the branches, right, would be grafted in. New branches, yeah, Gentile branches grafted in, right? So we haven't necessarily replaced Israel. We've fulfilled Israel. Now, Israel can become part of us. They choose not to, right? But the fact of the matter is, you know, we are Israel. So Church Fathers in the first 400 years used to call Rome the Eternal City. Now, Jerusalem used to be called the Eternal City. See, it's shifted. You know, it's like Israel is the tribe. It's a race of people. It's not a country. It's never been a country. Even before Romans occupied it and they called it Judea, It was called Palestine. It's always been known as Palestine. Yeah, so Israel's not a country. Obviously we recognise there are ethnically Jewish people. Of course, just like we recognise there's ethnically African people and ethnically Chinese people. But the fact of the matter is we're not going to make a special place for them because they forfeited their covenant. Okay? Like obviously the Abrahamic covenant was a thing. We don't deny that. The Catholic Church does not deny the Abrahamic covenant. But in that Abrahamic covenant, it does say all nations will come in. And of course, it says whoever will curse Israel will be cursed. Whoever bless Israel will be blessed. But that's not Jewish people. That's the church. The church is Israel. We fulfilled Israel. So, every covenant was an important covenant, right? The Adamic covenant, the Noah flood covenant, Abrahamic covenant, the Mosaic law covenant, Moses, the covenant that was made with Joshua. They're all important covenants, but they're all pointing towards Christ. If the Jewish people have a special place, that means that Christ was not being honest in the scriptures. When he said the Spirit of truth will be with the church forever. We have the truth. We have the Spirit. So what does that mean? It means that those guys have, for their own desire, have cut themselves off. That's not our doing. We haven't cut them off. They've cut themselves off. Why do you think St. Paul, every place he settled in, right, he always went to the synagogue first? Always. We care about them. We want to save them. But they cannot be saved, rejecting our Lord. So, and Candice Owens, Matt Walsh, Michael Knowles, they're all right theologically. But then it's not all Catholics, is it? I mean, what about Tucker Carlson? Tucker Carlson's an evangelical. He's got no time for them. You can't just put it on Catholics. I mean, during Hitler's reign, let me tell you something, the Catholic Church did the most. Do you know that? The Catholic Church, actually, if you look at the history books, they rescued 2 million Jews and they sent them to South America for safety. Look this up. 2 million. Well, the Protestant Church in Germany were handing them over to Auschwitz. Catholic Church never did that. If you look at all the clergy that got killed during World War II, during the Nazis' reign, right, mostly Catholics. Why? Because they stood up against the evil of Nazism. Right? Let's not forget that. So traditional Protestants were much more hostile to Jews than Catholics ever were. Now, obviously, there's a new wave of Protestants, evangelicals in America. They're cut with a completely different cloth, and they're what I would call dispensationalists. So they mean that there's basically a special place for the Jews, right? So basically, God's got a plan for the Christians, but he's also got a plan for the Jews. And that's why they say, oh, don't try and save the Jews. Don't try and convert them. Leave them. Just leave them. They're fine. God will take care of them. No, he fucking won't. He won't take care of them. And it's allowing them to live a godless life, a life of hedonism, a life of fucking, excuse my language, but being completely rejecting all his graces. Reading Talmudic writings that are in their root and essence esoteric and Gnostic, right? You read those Talmudic writings, they've got no resemblance of the Old Testament canon, none at all. A lot of Jews don't even read the Tanakh. They don't read the Torah. They don't read it. So we can't let them just go down a dark path. That's not love. We have to share the gospel to our Jewish brothers and sisters. If we don't share them the gospel, we don't love them. So you can say what you want about Candy's Own, but she genuinely cares about Jewish people. She loves Jewish people. She wants them to be saved. We Protestants in America, even a lot of them, not all of them, are doing a disservice to the Jews. They're doing a disservice to them. Oh, Nick Fuente, I don't watch him. He's a bit of a god. He's an idiot. I'm embarrassed he's a Catholic because he knows nothing about theology. He's very smart on politics, but he's not a true Catholic, Nick Fuentes, and he is a racist arsehole. There's no question there. I don't know how he's become so successful. I guess he's controversial, but you can't compare him to Candace Owens. Candace Owens has got, in Corinthians, it says that a husband can make his wife holy. So let's say he's got a wife who's a non-believer. Well, he can make her holy. Well, that's what's happened with Candice. When Candice met George, she was a non-believer. Now she's a devout Catholic woman, goes to confession every week. She clearly, God is working through her. She loves God, and she's actually put her head on the parapet for the justice of Charlie. She really wants justice for him because we know it was an inside job. And she's not going to leave any stone unturned. But I promise you, it will come out in the end. And everybody will have to apologise to Candice. Everybody. Because the bitching that she is receiving is not on. It's not on. How many Jews existed before the war? Well, I would say 1 million more than there are now. I think they reckon 10 million died during the Holocaust. I don't know if it was that much, but it's definitely over 1 million. Did you see what Martin Luther wrote in his letters about the Jews? Read them. Read his letters. He said that they should all be, all the synagogues should be banned, and that they should be thrown into slavery. We are not anti-Semitic. The Catholic Church is not anti-Semitic towards Jews. Not in a. Did you know France helped Britain win that land back? Palestine. We won it and gave it to them for refuge, not because we thought that they should have it theologically. It had nothing to do with theology. It was literally refuge for them because we knew that was the land they originally used to occupy, and they did. I'm not denying that. The Israel tribe, the tribe of Israel, occupied that land. But we had a diaspora. And then Jews become Hellenized because they lived in Greece for a very long time, Asia Minor. And then they kind of became like gypsies. It's a bit like, let's imagine a gypsy community suddenly turn up at the House of Parliament with billboards and say, right, we want a piece of land. We're fed up with being persecuted. We're fed up with having to be on the road constantly. You need to give us some land because we have human rights, right? And then the British government say, right, okay, we're going to give you where you're originally from. And they look at the lineage of gypsies, right? From where do they originally come from? And they follow the line. We see around the 15th century, there was a lot in Romania. Let's go before that. Follow it. Pakistan. There you are. We can send you there. And they get a bit of land. Can you imagine that? And they just plonk them all there. Pakistan, because that's where they originate from. And they do. Most gypsies, unless they're Irish, of course, originate from Pakistan. They won't like me saying that, but it's true. It's true. But Christian nationalism will only work if the country turns Catholic. And I know in America that would never happen. Never in a million years. There's so much anti-Catholicism in America. It's unbelievable. But in England, I've got hope because there's so many lukewarm Christians over here anyway. There's so many, especially from the Church of England. Do you know what? When I was a kid, there was an old joke about the C of E, and that joke is it stands for two things: Christmas and Easter. Because the majority of C of E people would only go to church on those days. You know, what was it? An old joke on Only Fools and Horses. Yeah, it's Catholic Church, too bloody strict. But C of E, they're fine. Bring a can of baked beans for Harvester, and you can do what you want. So true. So true. So true. There's no teaching of repentance in the Church of England. You know, what's the Eucharist? Wafer. That's what it is. It's a wafer, and if you're lucky, some red wine from the chalice. But they tell you we don't know what it is. They tell you they don't know what it is. They say if you think it's spiritual, have it as a spiritual thing. If you think it's a symbol, have it as a symbolic thing. They don't know what it is. So when you've got a priest who's doing the institutional prayers over it, they don't even know what it is. But did you know, in the C of E, a layman cannot consecrate the Eucharist. It has to be done by a vicar. I attended a C of E Christmas service 2 years ago in a little village church called St. Andrew's. And they had to grab a vicar out of retirement to do Christmas Eve Mass there, Christmas Eve service. And it was a low church. It wasn't a high church. I spoke to most of the congregation. They go, oh, we just think it's a symbol. You think it's a symbol. But they dragged this man out of retirement. He's had to come all the way there. He was sleeping. He was snoring in the pews. He didn't even run the service. He literally came on just to institute the bread and wine. That was it. He was there. He was on the pulpit for 10 minutes. He didn't preach. He did nothing. And I'm thinking, this could have been done by the lay. Why is this not done by the lay? Oh, but it's canon law in the Church of England. It goes all the way back to the 39 Articles of Cranmer. We have to have a minister to institute the Eucharist. I mean, what a waste of money. Taxpayers' money. Dragging a guy out of retirement. The money must have been good. You can tell he didn't want to be there. They must have been paying him some nice bit of money. And he had to drive 25 miles. He lived in fucking Verwood, which is out deep in the New Forest. And there's a little village suburb outside Bournemouth called Kinston, right? Well, from Verwood to Kinston. If it wasn't for a little old lady who fell on her ass at the back, he would have slept all the way through, because that's the only thing that woke him up. But to be fair, they kept the service going until the ambulance arrived. You know, they could have cut the service off, but they didn't. They kept it going. So fair play to them. Yeah, well, you know, I've judged people. I mean, I've done it with my own brother. My brother, I think, is beyond being saved. I'll be honest with you. It would take a divine miracle of all proportion, you know, like feeding the 5,000, you know, that sort of scale to change him from being a complete asshole, because he's just nasty. He's a nasty, nasty man, and that's even without the drink. He's just nasty. You know? Have you ever met someone who's just nasty and you look them in the eye and it's just dead? It's completely dead. That's my brother. But I still have to pray for him. It's hard. It's very hard. But Brett Murphy, Bishop Dewar, Chris Wick, I feel like they need a new plan. It's not working. Because all they're doing is going like that. Oh, them bloody Muslims. Oh, they're bloody LGBT. Oh, bloody, 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 bloody. Stir the pot, stir the pot. Controversy. Gossip. Stir it. Loads of likes, loads of shares. Doesn't matter. It gives me money. I don't care. Oh yeah, I'll set up a GoFundMe for the church roof. Yeah, keep throwing me money. Stir the pot. Stir the pot. Get people angry, especially the working class. Go on, piss them off. Get them angry, because people, particularly uneducated people, right? People that feel alienated, disenfranchised, they always need a leader. And if it's someone in a dog collar, looks all fancy, that does its job. That's enough for them. It's hook, line, and sing. They jump on that. They love that. And they'll give you every ounce of money they got because they want to be loved. They so badly want to be loved. And they think these men, because these men are telling them what they want to hear. Oh, it's nice to hear this from a spiritual person, from a person who loves God. Well, maybe his prayers might be better. Maybe if I tell him all my problems, they can pray to God, and I'll suddenly be healed of my anguish. And they gravitate to these people. They gravitate to these men because they think somehow these men are going to give them everything they want. Well, I'll tell you this now. This country, it's going to become a melting pot, whether you like it or not. There's nothing we can do about it. It's going to become a big, 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 big melting pot of different types of people. But like I said, that's an opportunity. It's a huge opportunity. People are coming here from countries that have never even heard the gospel. People from Nepal. People from Kathmandu. Kuala Lumpur. People from all over the place. Nairobi. From countries that have not heard the gospel. Let's take this opportunity to spread the word of God. Just get these people in. When I'm in a church and I see every nationality and ethnicity, do you know how embodied I feel? I feel like, yeah, God's message is transcendental, isn't it? It crosses all boundaries. Beautiful. So actually, yes, we need working class English people in church, 100%. But we also need the boatloaders as well. We need them more, and we need them to enjoy each other, embrace one another, share food, share culture, share. Do you know what I mean? And then it can work. But Islam is no threat to me at all. I do not fear it in the slightest. But these guys, they must stir the pot, get you pointing your finger at them. Oh yeah, it's their fault, it's their fault. They're having more kids than us, they're going to overtake us. I don't see it. I don't see it. The biggest problem we have in UK society is not Islam, it's secularism. It's a complete rejection of God. What's better? 95% of your population being religious, in the sense, believe in a God, right? Or let's say, okay, so you've got the lion's share, 60% Christian, right? God-fearing, zealous, hardcore Christian, but then the 40% are atheists. What's better? I want a country where people at least acknowledge who God is. Because I'm telling you now, there's more chance of converting a Buddhist, a Hindu, a Sikh, a Muslim, than there is someone who completely rejects even the thought of there being a God. Because some people can't live with the fact there's a God. Why? Because they love their sin too much. They love their sin. So Christian nationalism As much as it's a pipe dream, and I'd love it to work, but we're too far gone. Trust me, when this country gets taken over by the Green Party and we do away with all our Christian laws and there's no human rights anymore, okay, and we basically become a Marxist state, then people will realise, oh shit, we let go of something pretty good, didn't we? Yeah, you did. But you didn't want to listen to the Christians. You were saying they're all crazy. You're saying they're mad. You're saying they're small-minded, bigots, fundamentalists, fascists. Oh, they believe in fairies. They're all, Bible bashers. Yeah, we didn't want to listen to them. They believe in the flood and bloody Adam and Eve. We can't believe that. We believe we're from monkeys. And then all of a sudden, a penny will fucking drop, and they'll be like, "Oh shit, what have we done? What have we done? What have I got in this shirt except for bullshit?" An atheist will look at me and they'll say, "That is ironic. You're a Christian, but you're exempt from bullshit? How does that work?" Pretty simple, mate. Pretty simple. Look at the prophets in the Old Testament. They warned them. They said it was coming. But people just ignored it. And the same is happening again. We're not prophets, but we have common sense. We're exempt from bullshit. We know the country's on a fast decline. But I will tell you, do not hate the Mohammedans. Do not see them as the problem. And I won't tell you to hate on Jews either, because they're not the problem either. The average Jew in Golders Green, fine. Let them just do their thing. Their knees will bow, their tongue will confess. It will happen. Don't you worry. Let God deal with them. But seeing Islam as a threat, really? You see that as a threat, but you don't see some 6'2" bloke in high heels and a miniskirt in a kebab shop chatting up the guy at the counter going, "Oh, you give me a discount?" And she had an Adam's apple as big as a walnut. You can see her balls hanging out of her skirt. Like 2 stockings. And that's acceptable? But you don't see that as a threat? No. Because that is godless. When you try changing your gender, you're going against God's creation, you're going against God's providence, God's plan, God's purpose, God's propitiation, God's pronouncement, God's covenant, God's law, God's sovereignty. Because you've said, "I don't need you, I'm going to do it on my own. And I'm going to cut it all off." Sexual immorality is a problem, guys, because once you accept sexual immorality, you accept all the things that go with it. Abortion. I'm just saying it how it is, guys. I'm saying it how it is. Let's use abortion as contraception, shall we? Yeah. And I can just do what I want. You think that's good? You think that's holy? Let's bump off grandma. I want more inheritance. Let's just tell her she needs to die because she's too much of a hindrance on our well-being and she's a burden. And nursing homes cost too much. Let's just get her jabbed and do away with her. Granny going along with it. She'll sign the waiver form because she knows we need the money. Unconditional love. Yeah? Doesn't exist anymore. But supported suicide, yeah, that's had its sign of approval in the UK. So supported suicide. Dogmatic. Modernism of the home. So yeah, absolutely. Well, what do? You've got AI now. People worried about ethics and morality. Well, soon, you'll get robots giving you counselling. They want to do away with all the churches. They don't realise the psychotherapy and counselling comes from church teaching. Even Sigmund Freud, that evil, twisted, Marxist atheist, had a Christian education and knew the importance of theology when doing psychotherapy. But yeah, we'll have robots doing the very thing that only a human could do properly. But hey, where do you draw the line? You end up getting robot midwives. Transhumanism. Transgenderism is one thing. Transhumanism, why not? Why not? There's guys out there that have sex dolls. They give them names. They christen them. They take them shopping, cinema. This is the depravity we live in. It's crazy. But hey, what do we do? What do we do? We have to let it get that bad. It's not going to get any better. Let's be real. I'm not even sure how it can get any worse, but I think it will. It will find a way to get worse. I mean, if you said to me 20 years ago that the UK would allow abortion up until 9 months, I'd have said, nah, no way. This makes Sodom and Gomorrah look like a preschool carnival. I mean, seriously. This is no. What? So yes, so secularism we should be afraid of. Not Islam. Not Islam. But of course, politicians want you to point the finger at Islam. They want you to do that. Someone's got to take the blame, haven't they? Can't be these white middle class with their nice picket fences, taking all our money, having secret trust funds and offshore accounts, doing deals, dodgy deals with taxpayers' money. No, we can't look at those guys, can we? No. The Eton educated public school boys, the old Thai network, yeah, can't possibly think it's their fault. The ones that go to, Davos, the secret events they do around the world where only the elite attend. Great Reset 2030, yeah, we know. But again, I have no fear. Because we have God. But put in your comments if you know Brett Murphy, Kieran Dewar, and Chris Wickland. Tell me what you think about them. Do you think they're good? I thought they're good. Do you think they can make a climactic shift? It's got to be at a cosmic scale, hasn't it? It's got to be a seismic scale. It's got to be. Can they do it? Have they got the minerals? And I just think they mean well, but they're going it the wrong way. Like I said, starting a fringe church is not going to cause a huge movement. You need to be unified. That's my opinion. But I will say to Brits that don't think we should have a monarchy, I would say please reconsider, because if we don't have a monarchy, we've lost the fabric of this great nation. We really have. Don't forget to hit like. Don't forget to share the content. Subscribe if you haven't already. And hit the notification bell, because I'm going to do many mornings. But I must go to bed now. I've got nobody watching. It's zero people watching me. It's because I said some naughty words like abortion. And I'm trying to zoom in, but I can't. Goodbye, and take care.